Hi, I'm Monica Dupé,
And I'm Grant Denton,
and this is Good Intentions, Bad Outcomes.
where we unpack all the bullshit related to homelessness so that you can help and advocate in a more meaningful way.
Hey, welcome to today's show where we're going to be talking about messaging around homelessness, specifically like maybe messaging that someone might hear on the news or in a flyer or on social media about coming down and helping with something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is a tough one for me because when I think about like when we got into working with the homeless, I remember like this really charges me, and you're like, why do you get so charged about things? Because specific things charge you in different ways. And for me, like part of it's that I was homeless before. Part of it is that I've been targeted before, and another part of it is that you have to also like and I don't know if it's me projecting from when I was homeless or addicted and on the streets, but I did a lot of damage when I was homeless and addicted and all those things, and I feel really strongly about how much damage I've done. Do you know? And when I was in that, not just because I was doing damage on the streets doesn't mean that everybody that's homeless was doing damage, but there's a lot of us that do, and so there has to be a balance in how we address and message this, right? Whose role, does that make sense?
Yeah, what it's kind of coming through to me is I know that like specifically with what I saw happen with you, where you were attacked last year by a lot of advocates.
Yeah.
And there were stories being perpetuated around about your lack of professionalism and things like that. And I had not experienced that. And I just thought like working in this field, especially working with vulnerable populations, many of us are mandatory reporters and we keep incident reports because we do work with vulnerable populations and we don't want a lawsuit to come back on us 6 months later with statements that we didn't keep up in files. And so I was surprised to not see any incident reports, any written reports to back up any of the claims. And so when I'm listening to you talk right now, what I'm picking up on is how easy it is for someone to just make a claim about someone. And especially in working in the homeless sector, many of the people we serve have pasts. And so if these people, if we're in the business of giving second, third, thousand chances, it was difficult for me to understand why that wasn't being extended to you, why your 20-year past was being brought up. Like, it was weird to me because it was coming out of the mouth of someone who I've also heard give people second chances, don't hold their past against them. And so it got just a little muddy for me on whose past do we hold against them, whose past do we not hold against them. And it's a touchy subject right now with canceling people and some of the tactics that are used in the field.
It was interesting. Around that same time, I remember talking with you and how I was like, that's interesting. Is they were bringing up my past when I was homeless. They're bringing up my criminal past. They were bringing all these things up from back then. When I remember telling you, I'm like, dude, they hate me now, but they'd love me if I was still homeless and addicted.
Yeah.
Right. If I was still on the streets, homeless and addicted. And what do you want for a homeless and addicted person? Well, you want them to climb out, and when they climb out, this is how you treat them. This is how you behave towards these people, like to somebody who's committed their lives to helping folks just because you don't freaking like them, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was tough.
There's a lot of emotions involved, I noticed, in this field. We have to emotionally invest if we want a client to emotionally invest back. But we're not given a lot of support around that emotional investment. So when you're investing in all of these people around you and then you're attacked, it feels really bad in this space because you're giving your all.
Yeah.
And the way that you're rewarded is by people trying to destroy you. And when you dig in a little bit deeper, you're going like, why is this happening? So like if someone legitimately is harming people in the space, then I understand why it's happening. But if someone isn't hurting someone in the space, why are people trying to cancel them? And what I've seen, because I've been in this field now for 20 plus years, and what I've seen is it usually surmounts to some sort of a jealousy. Somebody wants your program funding, or they feel like they should have gotten funded, not you. They don't understand why you're getting money, they're not getting money. And then it goes into like a deeper level of they're not even writing proposals. Like they're not even competing the way everyone else is competing. And so that's kind of where I'll stop digging at that point. But I've noticed that there usually is some sort of a get even. I'm mad. I'm trying to get what I want. There's something like that going on behind the scenes of the cancel projects that I've seen around professionals in the space. You're not the only one I've seen. I've seen other folks get gone after too.
Oh yeah, no, they come for him. I remember when they were coming after me, and a journalist called me and was like, "What are your thoughts on this?" And I'm like, "I think it's a freaking witch hunt, dude. I think it's nuts that they're even bringing that up." But like, and I asked the journalist, I'm like, tell me. Do you think these people are really authentic? Do you think they really believe that I'm this inappropriate person? Or do you think they're just coming after me to come after me? And he couldn't answer it because he was kind of on their side. Do you know what I mean? But I felt like he was on their side.
He probably didn't want the target to move from you.
Yeah, he didn't want.
Yeah,
he didn't want to be targeted.
Him.
Like, it's on you right now. Let's leave it there.
You know, I found that for me, it was pretty easy. I did some exploring, tried to find some incident reports, tried to find some evidence of what was being said, and I could find zero evidence of what was being said. And I just treated the situation like I would want to be treated if I were in that situation, which is I would want to be fairly treated. And if there was no evidence of something, I would expect to be, found not guilty, and life goes on. Not found not guilty, and my life is still ruined.
Yeah, it was, and it didn't add up because these people, because I was blown away. I didn't know. I knew that on the streets, we do some shit. On the streets, like you're waiting around, like we're waiting around to rob each other. Like that's it. Like I've been in multiple circles, multiple trap houses, from one to the next one, to all the drug circles, homeless circles, all the things, and we're just waiting to rob each other, right? Like really, and I know that someone's going to get me if I become a mark, or that's just part of the gig. But I didn't think that people did that in the real world. I didn't think that like the real world, people that have jobs and have homes and drive vehicles, their own vehicle. You fucking guy drives his own car. What a great guy. You have a job in a fucking apartment? This is great. Oh God, what a great person this must be. I didn't know that like people did that. You work for a nonprofit? Wow. What a really great, and I didn't know that like people did that. I didn't know that people in the real world like were so mean. I was real naive.
Well, I think that one of the things happening with adults right now is that they are stuck in loops from, unhealed childhood trauma. I think most of us have that. And you get triggered by something happening, and you fall into behaviors that are from your unhealed child instead of the grown-up you. And confrontation is one of the things that I think most adults do not do right, because, confrontation done right leads to greater intimacy. So if we're not doing confrontation right, it's just leading to further, destruction. And I see that happening. So like if somebody is very concerned about someone's behavior, why wouldn't that person be confronted about their behavior and an opportunity to change that behavior, not to shame and embarrass and make them wrong, even when you have no evidence of that. And so I feel like that we have a lot of growth to do, adults have to do in this area of confronting. For crying out loud, we're adults and we're canceling people. And it moves over into the Anarchist Federation, the homeless organizing handbook, where many of the tactics in that handbook are destructive, and you wouldn't want those tactics to be used against you. And so I would like to really see, especially with the advocates, an evolution of escalation tactics, an evolution where we have accountability in it too. So I get people are upset, desperate, they just want to fuck the system kind of
Yeah.
thing. But that isn't actually going to improve things. And so what we need now are we need people like you telling us what is the blueprint to get to where we need to get to. How do we go from being punitive to be behaviorally supporting people in their changes? And so, I mean, when we have this messaging that goes out to people, which is
Yeah.
like, you don't like what's going on, then squat in the buildings. If you don't like what's
burn
going
it down.
on, yeah,
Burn it down.
I mean, you're going to go to jail, and you're not going to help the cause. And so I just think there are better ways to spend your time if you want to help the cause.
Yeah, I remember. So around that time, I remember being in City Hall because they didn't just try to cancel me once; they multiple times, right? One was they tried to cancel my nonprofit, right?
Yeah.
Another time was one was when we got the Safe Camp, and they were like, "These guys, they're gonna kill people out there. They're not fit to run a Safe Camp." And then when the RFP came up a month later, they even did a thing trying to shut us down. What is it? A group.
Like a change.org
Yeah,
petition.
they did a change.org saying remove Grant from leadership. Like I've never met any of these people. They've never the ones I have met were the like kind of out there ones that serve food and feel like they're changing the world with a cupcake kind of shit. You know, it was outrageous. And these folks were did a change.org to get us removed from running the Safe Camp. But when the RFP came up for the Safe Camp, nobody else, none of these folks did an RFP. None of them.
I'm just going to point out it is complicated to get a approval of a camp. It's very complicated. I remember working with you a little bit on this, just a little of the very beginning concepts of the idea, and the insurance alone was cost prohibitive. It was, I mean, close to $100,000 a year for a Safe Camp. And so not every agency or person is going to be able to realize that dream of having a Safe Camp. And I feel grateful for this community that we found somebody that could bring that to fruition, because I know that it was a topic for 10 years, and we could not find a provider that the municipalities would actually get behind and say, okay, we can get on board with this. And so I don't think if it was you, I don't think they would have approved anyone's, because they believed in your leadership and that you would do what you said in the proposal. And that has been the problem with Safe Camps across the United States, is that proposals are made and statements are made in the proposal that are not kept to. So then they have to come in and shut the camps down because they're not kept clean, they're not kept safe, they're not kept productive like are proposed.
Well, one of the biggest issues that I learned, right, because I was relatively new to the community before maybe 3-4 years in the community before I started pushing for a Safe Camp. And then you learn that there was a Safe Camp. It was a tent city, and it was right next to Record Street. And what happened was the mayor okayed for people to be there because case managers were like, when you sweep these camps, people are displaced and all the things, right?
Right.
And the mayor okayed it, and it was right behind Record Street along those tracks. But the problem with that is he said, yeah, you could stay, but there was no oversight, no rules, no anything. So it just turned into this legalized camp with all the illegal behavior. Mm-hmm. And they were still pimping, there was still sex work, there was still drugs and drug behavior and violence and all the things. Eventually, they had to shut it down. And so when you say tent city or Safe Camp in Reno, after that, it left a bad taste in most people's mouths. And they're like, never again. And then when I proposed it to the county, not as a Safe Camp, but as an alternative camp to where folks can go, where we can and there would be rules, and there would be a mission, and there would be we had an idea of success. What would make us successful? Just people not going to jail, or people that not burning it down. Let's start with not burning it down. Let's start with not, and then you create a program around. There has to be a program. You can't just say, all right, everybody, you're all good to go, because then whatever culture's on the street stays there, and it'll get worse too, because you just okayed it.
Yeah.
Right?
What Grant's talking about too, when he's talking about a program, he's talking about you're going to identify your target population. You're going to define how are you housing them, for what length of time, what are you going to be doing with them while they're there. You really have to sit and be specific about who you're going to be working with, and how will you be working with them, and how will they come to you, and then how will they be leaving you, so that someone could understand what that program will do as far as affecting their life. And
Yeah.
so there is a lot that goes into a program, and you're more likely to get an outcome if you actually have a written program versus, well, they're all just going to come here and sleep here and we're going to get them all jobs. And you end up kind of getting lost in, like, one guy needs an ID, another guy can't read, he doesn't have a high school diploma. Like, you start running into what their onion layers are of why they haven't actually gotten that high school diploma yet or that job yet. And then you have to start kind of micro working each of them on their own success plan. So that's what he's talking about when he says, I defined a program on paper and said, this is what we'll be doing.
And we identified what success was, and we went and we did it under an emergency situation because it was an emergency. It's right after COVID. We're trying to get folks off the river, trying to get them in under something, right? Whether it's a tent, whether it's a mod pod, whether it's a roof, whatever that looks like. And so it was kind of an emergency situation, and we started like that. And everybody, the people who previously were fighting for safe camps were against our safe camp. And they were the ones that were signing the petitions and that. What's interesting, what didn't add up, and so, like, things don't add up, right? One of the things that didn't add up is that, like, the same folks, right, that have fought for it before were fighting against me doing it.
Right.
And then it didn't add up that when they go, and when they were going in front of city council, in front of the homeless advisory board, and they're banging their fists, we need a safe camp. They're yelling at all the commissioners, and they're yelling at the mayor and the councilors and the council, and they're like, we need a safe camp like this one, and they named a safe camp. And so when the county was like, yeah, let's do it, I was like, perfect. We got to go to Portland and look at this safe camp, because that's what they were saying. And we went to that safe camp. It was one of the most unreasonable, mismanaged, misguided, misled, no idea, real. It was, they created a community, but it was just another homeless community. And nobody was leaving there, and there was still the same things. They just put a fence around a homeless camp, put some tiny homes in it, and says, all right, guys, there you go. And they left, and nobody was changing, and nobody was growing or getting out of homelessness. People stayed right there. It was a perfect example of what not to do. So it didn't add up to me in that, like, that these folks are like, you got to do it like this. I'm like, are you sure that's what you want us to do? Because we can keep people homeless but safer, right? Or we can transition people out of homelessness. And it didn't seem that what they were preaching for is what we all wanted. Do you know what made sense?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. The nuances in homelessness is, like, when you're in the bubble, this just becomes your way of life. Like, things just become very simple. Like, you can walk up to a situation and you could kind of in your mind go, that guy needs to be in this kind of housing. He needs this kind of support.
Yeah.
But you get that from a really intensive experience, right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of people don't have that kind of intensive experience. And so when they're driving by or they're just reading something in the paper, the response that they're coming to the article with, or whatever they're reading with, is like more of a, what can I do real quick to help? What can I do? How can I jump in? And it makes me think about your TED Talk about responsible giving, and about how a lot of the help that's coming in is not coordinated or organized or accountable. So it's really hard to make sure that the system is all working together.
Yeah.
And that sometimes some of that help is actually working against the success plan, maybe, that an agency is working with someone. And I think that's important to talk about too in the messaging that people are getting out there, are that there are people who legitimately work in this. I mean, you've talked about this. How many hours a week? How many hours a month of experience do you get versus maybe someone who's feeding once a week, or someone who's doing something once a month? The experience, the intensity of the experience is unmeasurable. Like, you know what you're talking about. Like, you could legitimately help somebody make sure their resource is going the full length that it can go, versus maybe dropping it off and it didn't make it into anybody's hands that really needed it. We even talk about this when we talk about food scarcity and how we feed at a lot of locations in Reno, and we're not really sure if the people actually showing up to those feed sites are the people that actually need the food
to be fed.
So there's an element of, do they actually need it? Am I giving the thing that's needed? Am I doing it in the way that works most aligned with the system. And so there's even like a messaging issue around that as well. And so I guess what my point is when you're seeing any kind of messaging online around homelessness, dig deeper.
Yeah.
Dig deeper, because this stuff is said and portrayed in a really surface way because it's so complicated and complex.
Yeah.
And so you should dig deeper to find out which agency, is this agency working with other agencies, or is this just kind of some weekend crew that kind of pulled together to go hand out blankets?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and so like what you were saying about digging deeper. That's like what we did when they said the safe camp that's successful. Do this one, and we so digged a little deeper, and we went there. Yeah. You're like, wait a minute, that doesn't. They've probably never been here. Like, sounds good, because I remember in the brochure looked a lot cooler than what happened when the website. There's all these great tiny homes, and there's a homeless guy with his arm around another homeless guy, and they're dressed really well and sharp looking.
Best friend.
Yeah, best buds. And it was like, and they look like they're relatively happy.
You want that for everyone.
Yeah. And you're like, that's what you do. That's how you do it. Those two guys, and then we went out there, and it wasn't. I mean, it wasn't anything like that. It was totally different. And so in the same way, like when the first time they targeted me, when they were trying to take down the nonprofit, it was right after, the second time they targeted me.
And this happens when you don't file when you open up a nonprofit, you have to file a 990 within 3 years. If you don't file a 990, it just automatically revokes your nonprofit status.
Yeah.
And so many agencies find this out the hard way.
Yeah. Well, and I found it out the hard way.
Yeah.
I got this thing in the
You're not alone.
mail.
You're not alone.
Well, I'm not a businessman, right? I've never done nonprofit before. We set it up on LegalZoom.
It's another thing. He doesn't put business into the nonprofit business, guys. It's all kindness. It's all kindness.
Yeah. Your heart really
he takes the business right on out of the nonprofit business. It's just kindness.
Well, that's right. And I thought, most people, when they think nonprofits and they think like helping the homeless or whatever, they're like, this is a really heart-driven. This is God's work. You'll hear that a lot. This is God's work. Sure. But there is a business side of it. And I had a board and everything, and that we should have known. The nonprofit was around for a year before I even did anything with it. Mm-hmm. So we were actually only 2 years in when we got that letter. 2 years into doing the work.
Right.
Doesn't matter whether you're doing work or not. When you start that nonprofit, the clock starts ticking. And I got this letter, and I opened it up, and I'm like, oh shit! And I called the president of the board, and the president of the board was like, hey, dude, it's very common, man. It happened to this nonprofit, that nonprofit, from common nonprofits in the community. And I'm like,
happens.
oh, okay, no biggie. But people don't like me out there, and so when we leaked,
it became a biggie.
It became a big. The news was calling me. I remember I was at home eating, had lunch, sat down on the couch, closed my eyes for a minute, and then I woke up. My phone's just blowing up, and somebody had leaked that that Karma Box was tax
revoked.
Fraud. Fraud, that I committed fraud. Grant Dutton commits fraud.
Yeah. Well, and
fraud.
that goes back to the tactics again, where you take a story, you spin the story, which is your status was revoked because you failed to submit your 990, turned into now that you've committed fraud. You must be mismanaging your money if you did not submit your 990.
These people made a meme of me that says corrupt, clout chasing butthole, but the other, right?
Yeah.
It was just insane, right? And we the news interviewed me. We're like, dude, I took responsibility, made a mistake, man. We had, but we got it back and everything. But in that time, I was just blown away, how they were targeting and attacking me. And I remember you sent me this handout. You sent me this thing. We're like, this is similar to what they're doing to you. And it was at IWW Aberdeen group that has this pamphlet on how to organize the homeless, how to organize the homeless, similar to unions. And so I dug a little bit in that, and IWW International, Industrial Workers Worldwide, and in America, it's started in Massachusetts. around the textile factories, and it was a really good cause. Like women weren't getting paid equal wages. They were having it like the men actually were doing all right. They were building these unions and
Always are.
yeah. Hey, we're doing okay.
Always are.
Fucking men doing okay always. But they were doing all right. They created unions and they were getting equal, like they were getting better wages. They turned it into the 8-hour work week, but the women weren't and the children weren't, right? And so they really started pushing back against this woolen factory and started pushing back against them. And that was the bread and roses fight that they had. It was I don't want to call it a riot, but they really the cops started shooting. They were beating kids and women. It was called the Bread and Roses protest or whatever. And that's what changed things in America. Right, for good.
A bunch of children and women had to die.
Yeah, I don't know if any kid. Well, one kid. I don't know if a kid died, but a woman did in that particular riot. And a kid. They brought up one of the kids that had her. She was scalped by one of the machines. Right. So I mean, there's these terrible things happen, and they fought for that, and that makes sense. And then they brought it to Aberdeen, Washington, behind the foresting, cutting the trees. What is that? They unionized
lumbering.
Lumbering.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
They unionized lumbering. So that makes sense. But then these guys, you sent me this thing about how they're trying to gather get people together, get the homeless to unionize, and it just didn't at all make sense. Actually, well, some things did make sense, right? In the beginning in the very first pages, it talks about pilgrimage versus solidarity. And you read, right? And you're like, pilgrimage.
Oh, you mean patriotism? Or are you talking about pilgrimage?
Let me see. Maybe I said it wrong. I'm sure I did. Patronage.
Patronage. Okay.
Patronage. Patronage versus solidarity. And you look up the definition of patronage. And that's where something's given to you when you're favored and it's good, right? And that's how they define it. And then and then solidarity is people coming together, equality, right? Patronage, inequality, solidarity, equality. And you read that and you're like, yeah. And it's right in the first paragraph. You're like, yes, this is it. This makes sense. And then you read a little more and it starts getting into other things and stuff that doesn't add up. And it doesn't really speak to solving homelessness. It speaks to burning down,
system.
Disrupting the system.
Yeah.
I didn't see any solutions in there.
Well, it is on the Anarchist Federation website, so it doesn't surprise me. It's a little anarchy.
It's a bit anarchist.
Yeah.
I don't
And basically, we're talking about organizing the unhoused. It's just a booklet that you can pull offline. It's on the Federation Anarchist website.
Yeah, and the question, first of all, when you start reading it, the question is, which unhoused are we talking about?
And that goes again where the nuances make a difference in all of this stuff. Trust me on this. When you're reading this booklet, there is a way to do everything that you want to do. There's a way. And I don't know that the correct way, the way that you're not going to get arrested, the way that's going to be most effective, that you're actually going to get closer to outcome is captured in this at all.
Yeah, it doesn't I wanted to do my homework because I know a lot of the people that were attacking me use these kind of strategies.
Yeah.
I started reading it and I'm like, oh, wait a minute. In there, they have a part about escalation strategy. And the goal, what it defines, underneath the goal is what is the desired outcome, which makes sense. I think every time I program, I'm like, what's our desired outcome? And is it growing the campaign by showing strength? Is it setting up local government to deny responsible requests so they look like assholes? It's really
there's an intention.
There's an intention to make someone look like an asshole.
Yeah.
Well,
I feel like we know more now. So, I'm not sure when this was written, but I know it was written over 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And so I'm not sure why there isn't a new iteration of this out because we know better tactics now.
Yeah.
For example, if you want to start a nonprofit or you want to deliver a funded program at some point, if you spend a bunch of time attacking officials in this way,
yeah,
you probably aren't going to be able to create the relationships that you need to create in order to keep your nonprofit open and funded over
Yeah.
over the years, because people have to feel like they can trust you and work with you. And I'm not talking about in the sense, yes, there are people out there that want you to just be a yes man to them and do whatever they tell you to do. But I'm talking about people who want to be able to trust the relationship. To be able to trust that if a mistake happens or if something's misspoken, that people aren't going to be shamed, that there
Yeah.
is a avenue for confrontation done right.
Yeah.
And they have to feel like they can do that with you. If they feel like they can't do that with you, then they just don't even want to do business with you.
Yeah, I mean, there's people in this community right now that spent so much time attacking the city, attacking officials, attacking agencies, attacking other people, that even if they do have a good idea, that shit's getting thrown out.
Yeah.
Why would anybody work with you? You've done
Yeah.
nothing but attack people and point fingers and accuse people of things, and just like you've done nothing.
And I understand. I know that a lot of the people that get called to this work, whether it be in a volunteer capacity or a paid employment capacity, they're therapizing themselves on some level. I get that. I get it. But you have to recognize when you're allowing your unhealed child to take over and start yelling at everybody, or if you, the person who's actually developing and working on yourself, is taking over and dealing with things. And we still sabotage ourselves, when we get upset and angry, things aren't going our way.
Yeah.
But if you're really serious about working in this field, you have to be mindful about how you're behaving with the different providers and the funders and things like that. If you want to make a difference, if it's not just about you therapizing yourself and you really want to make a difference.
Yeah, because I see no value in you. And when I go through these escalation strategies, I don't see any value in any of it. I don't like it. It in here, it talks about picking a target, right?
Yeah.
Picking someone that you don't like, that's not doing things the way you want to do them. And it says, like, how are you going to make this target do what you want? What's the most effective path to the goal for the least energy and resources to make this target do what you want? And they even have a section on what do you do to them when they don't do what you want? How do you escalate that? And it's insane, all the energy that this, as I'm reading it, it's like less and less about homeless. Like, I don't think that doesn't have anything to do with homelessness.
They're trying to get the tactics to a new group of people, which is homeless. They're trying to mobilize the homeless to deliver these tactics. But a lot of these tactics, if you do happen to look at the workbook, they have a consequence of going to jail. And so if you do these tactics, then you need to be ready for those consequences. But I would just point out to you that there are some more effective ways. I get that these probably speak to that unhealed child in you. But if you are in this work because you want to change the circumstances and conditions for homeless people, then you won't be thinking about getting even in a selfish way.
Oh, yeah.
You'll be thinking about, okay, is what I'm doing or what I'm saying help improve conditions and circumstances for homeless? No, then I'm not doing it. Like I said, I've been in this field for 20 years. Majority of advocates cannot do what I just said. They are so compelled to say what they have to say, do what they have to do. They are so compelled to serve their personal agenda in this work that they will compromise the greater work just to make sure that their personal message is heard.
Yeah.
And so it's disappointing because the homeless really do need people that can put that to the side so we can actually move the needle.
Yeah, they have a section in here. They have the public shaming one, which I agree with you. Some people should be shamed. Some people do some dumb shit and should be shamed. But I think they shame the wrong people too a lot of time. Like try to shame the wrong folks. There's
no principles in this.
No, dude.
There's no principles. That's where I kind of lose respect for the whole thing is there's just no principles in it. Like where is the accountability? You know, like you want someone else to be accountable. Where's your accountability? Like I almost feel like you have to show up providing what you expect. Not show up demanding something that you're not even providing, and then maybe I'll give it in return. So I don't know. I just feel like there's not a lot of principle in that.
There was this locally. There was the no sitting or lying ordinance that was coming out. When it went in front of council and public comment, you had all these folks come in and shame the city. Shame on you for criminalizing sitting or lying and shaming the businesses, because businesses went up there and were like, we need this ordinance because a lot of people were piling up in front of their businesses, setting up tents, doing all these things, and it was distracting people from coming to them. And that's just a reality. Like when you have someone laid out there, and maybe there's a meth pipe, maybe there's a crack pipe, maybe there's a lot of times there's alcohol and just the mess in general, right? And you can't ask anybody to move. That's a problem, and that interferes with people's business. And so, but these advocates went up and attacked these. They said that they're going to protest the businesses because they wanted at least the city to like have some control over folks sitting or lying in front of their businesses.
Right.
And like, how do you? And I get it; it makes sense. I work down there every day. I see these guys that come to work in the morning and have to try to clear camps, and then get shit thrown at them, and they get cussed out and motherfuckered for trying to have a little bit of order on this, and these advocates were like, we're going to protest your business. Shame on you. And then they start making personal attacks. One of the women that spoke had dreadlocks. She was a white gal that had dreadlocks. And they're like, look at you, culturally appropriating a hairstyle, and you hate the homeless. Like, what the fuck does that have to do with anything? Why would you? And they did this huge campaign. Of course, it didn't last long. I think our attention spans are shorter.
I got to point out here that so Grant and I talk a lot about this kind of stuff all the time. And so, for the purposes of having a productive conversation, I don't say things like, maybe we should build more housing. But this is what keeps our conversations productive, is I have those views. Grant also has those views too. Mm-hmm. But if we just stayed, well, build more fucking housing then. Build more fucking housing. How would we get deeper into our conversations? How would we get any further? And so this is one of the things that we hold back in certain parts of our advocacy because we know no one's ready for that. So for example, when I hold back on saying, well, then maybe the city should build more housing, the money isn't there to build this housing. So there's no point in me just kind of keep throwing that at him like the anarchist suggestions would be, was just keep shaming, keep embarrassing, keep shaming. That isn't actually going to make the city or anyone build more housing. What it's going to do is make the city stop listening to me. And so if I want to be part of the solution, then what I would be doing is trying to figure out how to realize that housing and then bringing those solutions forward. So that's what Grant and I talk about, and that's how we transcend our conversations past, well, then build more housing. To build more and these kind of tactics, because those tactics would just keep us stuck in a conversation. We would never get to a solution. So we're interested in blueprinting out the solutions that will actually work right now with the limitations that we have.
Yeah, and that's in the build more house, there is ways to do that, and you can lobby for things to do that. And I think there are folks that length of permitting and all the. And I don't want to.
It's all the development, the development.
The development side
stuff.
of it, and all the red tape and all the things. That's if you go to any conference or most homeless conferences. There was one in Vegas where the guy was, on the thing it says the main cause of homelessness, systemic racism. I'm like, can you now? So, that's the main cause of homelessness. I get it before, but when the redlining, things like that, totally get it. But but he focused on that, and we weren't focusing on in other conferences. Like we went to one in Washington, and then there was one prior to that I went to that spoke about a mayor's conference where their main gig was what can we do as mayors as a city to combat homelessness, and they focused on building more housing. There was a mayor from Gresham talked about how they're cutting red tape to developing and permitting and allowing people to start building more to where you can get a permit in 30, 60 days instead of however many years or 6 months, because these developers have to make it pencil out, right? So there has to be a merger. People have to when I say merger, one developer told me is there has to be a little bit of capitalism, a little bit of socialism, and you got to push them together, and somewhere in the middle, and that makes sense to me. Unless, do you feel like that's it?
Well, the situation that we're in around the housing right now, at least the level of housing that I always look at is pretty much 40% AMI and below, which is the housing that does not pencil out. You cannot make a profit off of it. And these are the projects that would take a land donation,
Yeah.
lots of private donations, and perhaps some state or federal funding to make that possible. But right now, our feds and our state continues to push our AMI up. So they're funding projects at 80% AMI. And so they're funding housing for people who could afford housing even without that help.
Yeah.
And so that's where I'm seeing, I don't know that things will improve until we see the government move that AMI back down and make a commitment to building housing that the developers refuse to build, instead of just subsidizing the developers to build at the level that they're willing to build for, which is what we're doing right now. And so there's definitely going to have to be some attention on that because, like I had mentioned, it isn't just the city level and the county level. The feds are now at a higher AMI. And with this new administration I do not see that changing with this new administration. But, it's not that we can't give the poor what they need. We cannot satisfy the wants of the rich right now. So we cannot provide for the needs of the poor. And so when we change that, we would be able to provide for the needs of the poor. We have very dynamic and smart people in this nation. And there are people that know how to pencil these things out with the right types of public-private partnerships.
Yeah.
But those capitalists and government have to be willing to step in and provide housing at that level of AMI, which they're not really there yet. And you will have to admit that when you start to house a lower AMI person, there's more problems that occur on the property. And that is one of the reasons that developers use to not really want to work with that population. It requires a lot of on-site supervision and engagement, and a lot of apartment complexes aren't set up like that.
So you have to look at when you do any kind of thing. So like, I believe that there should be a push for building more houses with cutting red tape, all that, and lowering the AMI and all those things. Someone's got to be working on that while we're working on this too. You can't do who's going to work on that? Somebody's got to work on that because we can.
That's a call out.
Yeah, somebody.
Yeah.
And someone's got to be working on that because we got to stay down here, and we have to be down here, constantly engaging, constantly working, programming, finding gaps, doing gaps analysis, finding what programs we don't have based on the people that we have and the problems that they have and all the things. So like, there's got to be someone working that. And I think a lot of when you start doing a bigger dive start digging a little deeper on why we're at, where we're at, and what the problem is, a lot of it has to do with how we've helped previously, right? A lot of the reasons why some of the rents were raised. And I was on committees, I was on the boards, man, right, of the people of the tenant. And they brought me on there as an advocate for the homeless.
Talking about tenant council.
Yeah, tenant councils. And they brought me on there as an advocate for the homeless. Then when you see like what we've done, right, and you can't there is some shared responsibility between the homeless and the homeless services, right? And homeless services are like, it's that guy, we shouldn't. But you do have a role in it. We do have a role. We do have a shared responsibility over who we put in there and how we support them when they're in there. And we've put people in places that we know that they weren't ready yet, just because we wanted to get a W, right? Just because we wanted to get that check. Like, we housed this many people. Yeah, but how did you house them?
Is he still housed?
And like, we have to ask as providers when our job is done. So is your job done when you give them the key to the apartment? Because it might not be. And you might set it up for that person to not only get an eviction, which will make it harder to house them later, but if you keep doing that to those property managers, those people that own those apartments, what do you think they're going to do? You think they're ever going to accept any more homeless people?
We already have that.
You think and that's why the rent's being raised. That's why people are like, not that guy.
Yeah, we already have landlords that won't rent anymore to Section 8s or won't.
And we did that shit. We did that shit by putting people in there that we know weren't ready,
and
but we wanted
them
to get a W, and we left them alone.
I get passionate about not providing the right types of service. Like me and you talk about this, helping
Yeah.
each person reach their highest form of potential and what that looks like for each person, and hurrying and rushing someone into like a housing first apartment it sounds good. But when you really deep dive and dig deeper and you look into housing first brings down property values. It brings down neighborhoods because people get the keys to an apartment and guess what? Their homelessness is ended. We just cured their homelessness because they're housed.
Yay.
But guess what? Now they're not keeping up their apartment. They're not going to their appointments. They're letting other people stay in their apartment now. Those people are now causing problems in the neighborhood. The neighbors are now calling and complaining about what's going on in that particular place. And so then that person loses their place. But now the apartment complex doesn't even want to help anybody coming from that referral source anymore because they don't want to open up that can of worms again. And so we, as the people who are the educated ones that have the power, that have the resources, we should have more responsibility in that homeless provider to homeless person relationship.
Yeah, a lot of that's on us. And you'll see, like, when we put people in there and they come back to the streets and they get in there and back to the streets, like, we've created this for folks where they would rather be successfully homeless than stuck at being housed. And we helped contribute to a person
condition.
be like, I'm good. People are like, he wants to be homeless. Like, I don't know if he wants to be homeless. He's just good at it. And we helped create that. We're running low on time, but I think I'm done with the workbook. I don't even want to talk about it anymore.
No, I think this was good to talk about today because the messaging that people hear around homelessness, dig deeper. So if you see something, it grabs you. Just dig a little deeper. Who posted it? What do they align with? What are the principles? How are they working with the homeless? Who else are they working with? Are they aligned with anybody? If you know one of us, reach out. Hey, is this place a good place to work with? Is this something good I should be doing? I mean, we definitely need more help. We like Grant was saying, like we need someone like focused on the low income part of the low income housing. So like, how do we empty the shelters out when we don't have that next level of housing even being realized? So we could use that level of help. I don't know of anybody. I know that the state housing has like a supportive housing, but it's not really what we're talking about. It's more about the fund that sits for development for housing. And then I guess that you can apply for some supportive housing funds if you happen to be a developer of those properties. But we're more talking about how do you create a 30% complex? How do you create a 40% complex? And we have the silver tsunami coming our way, which is all of the seniors, all the boomers, basically a lot of them are going to be priced out of living in their own places and they're not really sexy to help. They're you're not going to be working with them to get a second or third job. You're not going to be like, this is not a population that the media is going to do well with making this a happy, sexy thing to help. And so it's going to be interesting as homelessness worsens, how everyone is jumping in and helping, because these are our communities. We live here. We are affected by these things. And we don't have a lot of community mobilization in Reno. I know I'm going to start working on some soon, but we need to get mobilized as a community. And this today was a great talk because we should start getting ahead and thinking about, I want to show up. How do I want to show up?
Yeah, I would recommend when you get this messaging that's telling you to go SWAT on properties and picket lines and all this shit, there's other ways of like utilizing your energy and doing things that can be more effective.
Sophisticated and effective.
Yeah, it can make a bigger difference. Like I think a lot of this like is counterproductive. Do you know a lot of the picketing and the attacking and the targeting and all that shit is counterproductive.
It is. I've seen people maybe get a bone from that. But that's it. They never get anything else after that. And then no one wants to work with them either. So they were threatened to a point to where they gave up something. Yeah. But it left them with such a bad impression of the experience, they never wanted to work with that person ever again. Yeah. And so think about the tactics that you're using.
Yeah. The thing is if you when you're doing this, you think of all the folks that are trying to get people in or putting all this energy in a target. Like, what if you took that energy and like started advocating or lobbying for like affordable housing, started leaning in these ways, started working with I don't know exactly what it takes on more street level, but we know that needs to happen.
Right.
And I know for sure that if we could become the very best at street outreach, very good. We can get very good at street outreach where there's momentum on the streets. Folks are moving. They're starting to, starting to follow some sort of
routine,
social
yeah.
norms or routines on the streets. We're getting them into shelters. We're getting them into programs. We're doing a proper homeless triage. We're doing these things. People are growing we're getting folks that are seniors into in the proper place. All these things, but none of this will work. None of it makes sense if we're not also working on the housing at the same time. 'Cause you
Exactly.
can do all these great programs, but
Yeah.
then what? There has to be a next step. And the next step is getting into your house,
Yeah.
getting into a spot. And if we don't have that, then I'm not saying all this is in vain.
No, this is powerful because
Yeah.
no one is talking about this on like a statewide level. Like no leaders or officials are coming out and talking about the dire situation really that we are in. I know things have improved. We have
Yeah.
a big shelter. We have this system. We have some outreach momentum going, which we did not have.
Yeah.
5+ years ago. So we are moving in the right direction. But without that housing stock, what will happen, think about it, what will happen is the front end of the shelter will get loaded.
Yeah.
And there will be no exit out.
Yeah.
So the shelter will have to grow. So I just want the community to understand that if we don't start working on that housing part, then all we're doing is emergency sheltering.
Yeah.
We simply do not have the inventory.
And there's a flow in homelessness, and right now there's room to build more programs based on the people that we're working on. We're like, there's enough of these people to where we can create a program over here.
Yeah.
There's enough of these we can create a program over here. But eventually there's this conveyor belt, right, of homeless flow. But eventually, like the housing portion is, if someone were to put their arm right on a conveyor belt,
It's just going to hit and
and it's
everybody's
going
going
to
to
stop, and everything's going to
off.
start, and people, stop.
Yeah.
And so it's important that we address that. Well, I think we had a great show today,
Me too.
and we'll see you guys next time.
Yeah.
Good intentions, bad outcomes.